In this episode of The Leap, we sit down with Tony Kofkin, founder and executive director of Kofkin Bond & Co. With over 30 years in financial services and a background as an elite endurance athlete, Tony shares the mindset, discipline and resilience it takes to build a lasting business from the ground up. We explore the powerful lessons sport has taught him about leadership, pushing through discomfort, and staying focused when the stakes are high. This is a conversation about integrity, reinvention, and what it really means to stay in the game, no matter what life throws at you. Tony is a great man. I can't wait for you to listen to this episode. Welcome to The Leap, a business journeys podcast where we dive deep into the journey of business owners to learn from their successes and failures. Our goal is a simple one: to help more businesses succeed. Well, this is a very special episode because Tony today is sitting with one of his favourite football players, Kyle Langford.
I love this, Kyle, and I'm glad we had this fat opportunity to send my son. I'm looking forward to seeing your new shorts later tonight.
Mate, they're short, so it's very
shorty shorts.
But it's been short off the back of a short week, so I appreciate you coming in and spending the time with us
Hope
today.
the hamstring pulls up well tonight.
Well, we shall see. We'll be talking tomorrow to see how you go against North. But
and if you play bad tonight, Nathan, it's a pleasure to be here.
three goals. Put me down for three. But I mean, by way of introduction, I might pass it over to you to just give a quick minute overview of who you are and your business.
Kofkin Bond & Co. That's our name at the moment. It might be changed as of 1 July. We're going through that at the moment. So
you heard it here first.
Yes, we did. So there's a few people that know. So we are in the process of merger talks at the moment. It's been long talks, but we have agreed on equity splits today, actually, just at our directors' meeting this morning. That's all been agreed. We're agreeing to term sheets. We're in lockdown on Tuesday to agree to all the other final points on term sheets. It's actually with a commercial law firm. So the name might change. In saying that, though, we specialise in financial services, but we do also corporate advisory finance. And moving forward, we will have law as well. But when I say law, we have a very specialist arm in not-for-profit. There is a lot of our clients are large SME owners. So as you probably know, a lot of financial planners, they might deal with your self-employed tradies and things like that, but the large SMEs, they tend to walk away from or might deal with directors and things like that. But we do a lot of corporate advisory and thus look after a lot of the family offices, not-for-profits, a lot of the very large, wealthy families as well. So,
Amazing. And take us all the way back, right? Because you can always, there's always a journey before the journey starts, right? Were there any pivotal moments in childhood that you think, I guess, made you into a business owner? Were there things earlier in life that you, did you always want to be in business?
Great question. I think so. It's, I come from a sporting background, but I always liked wearing. Well, I'll go back one part. Where Cub actually is where we first met. It's at the TNG building, which, bit of history, was once the tallest building in Melbourne. So it's actually still got the largest floor plate of any building in all of Australia.
Really? As in, when you say floor plates?
Yes, in respect to space, square meterage of any building in all of Australia. So my father was a TNG insurance agent and what was known as a collector agent back in the day. So Mum and Dad were migrants here to Australia back in 1966 when they came, and as all good migrants did, they would take on 3 or 4 jobs, do whatever they could. Mum worked, Dad worked, and so us kids just ran feral. We had the keys to the house at the age of 4 basically, and go out, just come home when you're hungry. And that's what you did, so I'm 56 in a month or so. So that generation, we just ran feral around the streets and hope you come home. But during school holidays, as what a collector agent was this was before the days of going and having your premiums deducted, your insurance premiums deducted from your, direct debits.
Mm-hmm.
So if your premiums per month for your whole of life insurance policies were, $2 a month or something, Dad had to go around every month to all his clients and collect those premiums. So
what, in like an envelope in a jar?
No, it was basically an envelope left under the mat.
No way.
Yeah. So it's and he would collect them and he would tick that off. And
I thought they would have mailed the check or something.
No, not at all. So it's, so they would collect on. That was the option for people who couldn't afford to pay annual premiums. So it's. I mean, Mum and Dad's first mortgage was $6,000, and I think their monthly repayments were like, $8 or $15 a month or something. So you think a $2 monthly premium is a lot of money.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a lot of money. So that would be left under the mat with the milk bottles on the side. When you used to have the milk run and things like that too. So during the school holidays, Dad would actually dress me up in my little suit and tie. So he made me wear the bow tie. And my suit was shorts with the socks pulled up to the knees, of course. And Dad was an English gentleman, so he had to do the tie up properly. So he still makes me, his dad's passed now, but I still do the tie up properly. And he would take me out with him. So you'd often knock on the door, and if someone was home, you'd chat to them and things like that and how the kids. So he was really personable, my father, great storyteller. And he would always introduce me, and I'd always say hello. And back then it was always Mrs. Greeny or Mrs. Pisanelli, and, usually the mums that were home. And you really got to know everyone. And you'd collect the premiums, and then on Fridays you'd go to the T&G building, and he would have his briefcase, and it was full of money. And you'd go there, and basically where the Cub premises is now, they used to be what was called the vaults. And that's what they literally were. They were massive vaults, so like bank vaults down there. And all these guys walking in and out with their suits on, usually had their hats as well, walking in and out with their suits with briefcases full of cash. There's more cash going in and out of that building on a daily basis than probably were going in and out of banks, with just guys with briefcases, no handcuffs.
Yeah, I was going to say no security.
No security or anything like that. Would have been the easiest people to rob if you knew. But that's actually where I learned to count. So you'd be there on the register, so you'd have the card and it would say, Nathan's premium are $2. So he would actually make me count $2 in coins because it'd been ticked off that Nathan paid. Mm-hmm. So he'd make me count $2 out, and then I'd go up. I remember the gent I used to pay, his name was Omar Dax, or Mr. Dax. He's probably only 18 at the time, but when you're 5, everyone seems really old.
Yeah.
So I'd go up and Mr. Dax would come over and I'd say, this is for Nathan, Mr. Soti, and I'd go up there and he'd pass that over, and he would go and find the policy, and he'd tick it off that the premium's been paid and come back, and I'd give that back to Dad. And that's what I did during the school holidays with my father. So from that perspective, I suppose that's where it started.
I mean, it would instill for sure good work ethic.
That was my first job, unpaid job.
Yeah,
so it was
I've had a few of
good unpaid job. Having migrant fathers, you always had unpaid jobs. So it's so I think you would have had a Greek father. So it's good. You had a few unpaid jobs, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, but it's always like, while we're sort of on topic but not on topic. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day around, with my father, family, everyone that I know, they had second and third jobs.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, Dad also did cabs on the side.
See?
Yeah.
Right? And it's like we would always help. But I look at, the cost of living crisis at the moment, right? It's off topic, but is it cost of spending, versus cost of living? I get it, the house, as a multiple of income, house prices and stuff like that. But I'm like, no one works a second job? Is the people not doing what they used to do and what it takes to?
It's interesting you say that, Nathan, because a friend of both of ours, Tali, she used to say to me, Tony, you see, that's your generation. Things like that you're meant to keep in your head. You're not meant to come out of your mouth. Think it, don't say it. And it's just like, sorry, I'm Gen X. I just say it.
That's why I got my podcast, so I can just say whatever I want.
Exactly. You might have to edit that out. No. Don't edit. Charlie, I hope you listen to this.
Send it to her. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's but I think that is actually the key. You know, if things are tight, well, you know, it is our parents' generation. Our parents' generation were, if you wanted a new TV, you saved for it and you bought it. There's no credit. There's no credit cards. There was, if you wanted a car, you saved for it. You know, so it was different. It was completely different. I'm not saying times were better, times were worse, but you just saved. You didn't have holidays or overseas holidays all the time. You know, so even, you know, my education was half paid for due to the fact that I could actually swim, and so Dad had to get up at 4:30 every morning to take me swimming training to make sure that my education was half paid for and under a scholarship. So that was the sacrifice that he had to make sure that he didn't have to pay full school fees. So he dragged me out of bed so he didn't have to pay full school fees as well. So these are the things that happen. So I think it's just
what you said about the holidays spot on. Like people, it's a
we went to a caravan park in Ocean Grove.
Yeah,
that's where we went for holidays.
Yeah. Like it's a right now that you go to Europe once a year.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Know.
Yeah,
whereas
I'm off on the 6th of August. Yeah.
Well,
we're empty nesters now. I don't have to pay school fees anymore.
You're fine. You know. But yeah, it's it was just interesting while we were on the topic. But you know, like it was evident that it was ingrained in you from an early age, like work ethic, and you having seen that, you know, obviously shaped a lot of your own work.
But I also think the scalability side too. And you know, if my beautiful younger sister is listening to this, Michelle, you know, I learnt the scalability side of work very early on when I was delivering the Essendon Gazettes, and I worked out it used to take me 2 hours, which was great, walking the dog once a week. 2 hours to do my paper round, basically the Essendon Gazette, and I used to get paid $3.20 to do it. But I figured, because you had to go up one side of the street, then back the other side, and then the next street, and then the next street. But I figured that if I took my sister out on a lovely leisurely walk with me as well, and she did one side and I did the other, and we both got to walk the dog as well, that would be wonderful, good. She's 3.5 years younger.
That's business thinking right there.
It is, but of course I would pay her for the privilege of coming for a walk with me. And I said, why don't you come and do this? And Michelle, it's great for you, and I will pay you as well. And she goes, and I said, so you're basically doing half of it and I'm doing half. And she goes, how much do I get paid? And I said, 20 cents. And she goes, oh, fantastic. She didn't ask, you know, is how much is that compared to how much you get paid? So it's
goes to show, lesson learned.
So I also ended up doing the Leader, which was the real estate news as well, and I recruited a couple of the other kids to do that with me, and you know, so I gave them. They were younger kids as well, so I think they negotiated 50 cents. I'm not too sure, but it was a good little thing.
So that was it. That was the start of everything.
Yeah. So there's the scalability side.
When you were employed.
I've actually never been employed.
Oh.
No, so I did work, at the Laurel Hotel. I worked there as a barman once and did a part-time job at the Moonee Valley Racecourse, you know, as a glass boy. But, you know, as an adult, I've never actually been employed. Yeah, so I did have a contract as a professional triathlete, so you could call that being employed, I suppose, yeah. Yeah.
So it was Glenhurst, so I thought that was your first, like, self-employed venture.
No, so National Mutual was. So
was that technically I didn't
100% commission.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so it's down at South Bank.
So I thought that was an employed.
No, National Mutual was they bought T&G.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew of National Mutual because I joined National Mutual on my father's 25th anniversary in the industry. So it was the 14th of February, so Valentine's Day, 1992.
Kill me with your memory of dates.
Yeah, so it's not quite as good as Chris.
Yeah,
Chris. So him and his statistics is amazing. So that was, but I remember Valentine's Day. He joined Valentine's Day decimal currency conversion, which I think was 67. With that, now he didn't know I'd actually joined the industry because I didn't want to work with him. But you talk about those sort of sliding door moments or those pivotal moments. The reason why is I thought my life and my career was actually going to be sport. And, you know, I was what I call a B-grade athlete that just had the ability to be able to get sponsorship. So don't know how, had the gift of the gab, I suppose, I'm not too sure, but I had the ability to be able to get in front of a camera and be able to get sponsorship. And from that perspective, sponsors liked me, and I
think it's the looks.
Thank you. You know, he's such a charmer. I did get a job at Drake Personnel in the mail room. They were my first sponsors as a triathlete.
See, that was a paid gig.
Yeah, it was a paid gig, but realistically, it was sponsorship. Yeah, okay. So it was a paid gig, but that's when I was trying. They were the sponsors of the 4x100. Swimming Australian mean machine as well, swimmer. Yeah. So I was trying to qualify for the Australian mean machine 4x100 freestyle, of course. So Mr. Irwin did have a bit of a soft spot for me, and it was just he went and delivered some mail around the office, but it gave me all the time to do all the training. So so you could say it was a paid gig. See,
commission only though, like as well. I think.
Sorry, I joined the industry though because I busted my knee.
Yes.
So that's that pivotal moment where all of a sudden that sporting career that I thought I had was thrown out the window.
Yeah.
So that's
in that moment though, for you, was it like, because obviously you've built a tremendous amount of resilience in sport. What was it like being like that door's closed now?
I had a meltdown.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in that. I went and had all those wonderful. My mum was horrified because I was meant to go to La Trobe University and study economics, and that didn't happen. You know, I deferred for a year and never went at all. And so because I went overseas to live in Canada as part of the Drake team in Vancouver, and so from that perspective, no, you have to get your qualification. No, I don't, Mum. This is my career. I'm gonna, 20 years old, the world's your oyster, you're invincible, so, bullets bounce off you basically. And I injured my knee, interestingly enough, dancing, of all things. So it was, so I wasn't doing sport or anything like that. So it was, it was the late 80s. We built this city on rock and roll. That song still gives me shivers down my spine. So it was Starship, I think, is the band.
I wasn't expecting.
Big shoulder pads, curly head mullets.
I'm visualising it. Yeah. It's stunning. We've got to go through the photo album. But do you think so? Like, I can imagine how that would have been.
I went and lived in London for 6 months after that. I had a bit of a meltdown. Listen, I had fun over there, but I realised at that stage I had to come back and, and it was actually my mum who saw an advert in the paper advertising for National Mutual advertising for advisors, and I thought, I'll give it a go. I thought, if my father could do this, I could do it. And I was pretty much blessed to have a mentor and be put under an agency manager who's passed away last year by the name of Robin Dalbany, and probably the best agency manager the insurance industry had ever seen. And he knew my father, so he took an instant liking towards me. And basically he was a ex-cyclist, national cyclist, so he was very dedicated and disciplined. And I think because I had a sporting background and I was tall and probably a bit older and stuff like that, so he just said, here's what you have to do. And so, young, dumb and naive, as I've always said, and it was basically as a case of, so I just did what he told me to do and it seemed to work. So back in the day it was, ring 100 of your closest friends. I didn't even know 100 people, never mind actually people that were actually employed. Most of my friends were still at uni at the time, so it was, you had to go and cold call, or in my case I was walking up and down Burke Street doing street surveys. You just did what you have to do, and that's how it started.
And that was that for our listeners, like, was it specific to insurance more than anything? Or?
It was back then.
Yeah.
So I did that for the first 4 weeks, but I learned very quickly about statistics and how statistics work. And there was a gentleman by the name of Alex Parker. So our offices were down in 2 Riverside Quay, South Bank, pretty much down across the road, where you cross the road to go to the Crown Casino now. And he used to watch me walk out every day and then walk across the little footbridge there, go towards the city with a clipboard. And he came to me one day, and he was a big, robust Romanian Jewish guy. I didn't have any idea who he was. I later learned out he's the most successful insurance and corporate superannuation advisor that's ever lived in Australia. And he was originally T&G as well. And he said, "Oh, your surname's very familiar." And he said, "Is your father Michael?" And I used to hate it when people asked me that. And I said, "Yeah, he is." But you realise my father's the most beautiful man. He really is. Well, he's passed now, but he's the most beautiful man. So I started to realise that and just used it to my advantage in the end. But it was Was
there a reason at that time that, you didn't want to?
I just fiercely independent.
Yeah.
So he, as I said, for the first couple of months, he didn't even know I was in the industry. So it's just so let him know.
I know you.
That's right. So I'd avoid him at all costs. So he found out through somebody saying, "Oh, I saw your son. I didn't realise he joined the industry." And he came home one day. I'm still living with him. Yeah. So and he said, "Have you joined?" Anyway, that's another story. So he was very proud.
Yeah, I bet,
yeah, very proud.
I love that.
But it was.
But you wanted to make it on your own.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Alex asked what I was doing. I said, "Well, I don't know anyone, so here's what I do." And basically I have to ask 100 people to fill out a street survey. I've realised that if they see me coming towards them with a clipboard, they avoid me, so I approach them from behind and tap them on the shoulder. And, you see someone coming at you, you avoid them, or you look at your shoes or go on your mobile phone nowadays. You always look at some way to avoid them. So I worked out how to do that, and then I knew if I asked 100 people, I would end up having 10 of them that would complete the survey. It was 14 that would complete the survey. Of 14, 4 to 5 of them would give fake numbers, and of, say, the 9 that I had, which I rang, I would end up getting about 5 appointments, and of those 5 appointments, I'd end up making 3 to 4 sales, and that's what I did week in, week out. For the first couple of months, and that was just how it started, and it seemed to work, and all these other new people just weren't doing it, and they were doing nothing, and I never had a blank week. They were known as blank weeks, so and that's just what you did, and I was doing quite okay. And Alex said, "Oh, that's too hard, come to my office," and he gave me this whole bunch of papers, and there was like 100 there. He just went to his bin and made me pull them out because he couldn't bend over. He was so robust, and pulled them out. And I said, "What are these?" He said, "They're called continuation options." I said, "What's a continuation option?" And he said, "Well, basically, these are people that are leaving the corporate super funds that are my clients, and there's a rollover there, and there's insurance, and they can continue the insurance without having to do medicals. They just have to sign a couple of forms, and you can do the rollover." And I said, "Well, why are they in the bin?" He goes, "Well, they're too small." Basically, he's like a supermodel. If it wasn't worth 10 grand, he wasn't going to do it. So it was. So he said, "Oh, you can have them. Just do them." And I said, "Well, how much money do you want?" And he goes, "Well, nothing. They're in the bin. Just do me a favour. Come back to me tomorrow and ring them and tell me how you've gone."
I would have turned over every bin in that office looking for more lists.
Well, it was actually really interesting. There's probably a good 100 sheets there. And so I went back the next day, and he said, "How'd you go?" And I said, "Oh, I only got to ring 15. He said, "Well, you had a lot more than 15. He had a very thick accent. And I said, "Well, I got 15 appointments. I couldn't fit any more in." He said, "Well, I've got a whole heap more." So every day, he said, "I'll just come in and just take them every day." But the very first person I rang was the CFO of Slater & Gordon, out of a call. And he said to me, he made the comment, he said, "It's about time you returned my call. You guys returned my call. I rang you guys 2 weeks ago. No one's returned my call." And I just hesitated. There was a pause for about 4 seconds, once again, just young and dumb. And he said, "Listen, I've rang because, as you know, the corporate superannuation has just become compulsory, and we have to put the SG in place. We have a corporate super trust for all the partners here. We've had it for 30 years, but we've decided to put it all in place and transfer that to the SG and put all of our staff into the SG. Can you guys just come over and just put it in place for us?" I said, Of course. So it's and he said, when can you come over? I said, well, I'm free now. What I can just walk over to you guys now. I actually knew where their office was in Latrobe Street. And he said, well, I'm not free. I'm not free until like Wednesday or something like that. So I then rang head office and said, what's a corporate super fund? And they brought a guy out with me, and that was my first client. Ended up being a $50 million fund.
Wow.
Yeah, and I decided from that point forward I would specialise in corporate super.
Yeah.
And I ended up picking up, I got some really big clients out of that. I started doing all the big law firms. And after about a year and a half, I realised rather than sitting in the reception room, being up against the same MLC guy and same AMP guy, etc., I would go out on my own and I would start ringing all these firms and start doing blind tenders, and but I worked out a way of doing that. So I would ring up and I'd just say, you were in charge of HR, Nathan. I'd ring up and I'd say, Nathan, it's Tony here. Our corporate super fund, that's with Asgard, isn't it? And you say, no, it's with MLC. I say, oh, that's right, thanks. That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
And I'd hang up. And then I would...
But was it a big, you had obviously all of the, then going out to starting your own business, it's still a massive step.
It was interesting, once again, being young, dumb and naive. Getting your own dealer's license back then wasn't that hard. What was hard back then is they had what was known as tied agencies. If you wanted to use National Mutual, you had to be a tied National Mutual agent. The same with AMP. But you could use back then Australian Eagle, MLC, Colonial. There was a few companies back then that you could be what was known as a multi-agent. Asgard came out, things like that. They were the first sort of master trust. And I won a big fund, as an example, that AMP actually won the blind tender. And I spoke to AMP and said they've actually won the tender. So I'd actually charge 10 grand for the tender for a large fund. And so I told them they'd won, and they said, well, that's great, we'll do it. Who's the client? I said, well, I can't tell you that because I'm putting it in place. And they said, well, you can't, you have to be a tied advisor. I said, well, you don't get the fund. The second group will get the funding because it was very tight. So the group that came second will get the fund. That's your choice. And AMP ended up allowing me to be the first non-tied advisor to write a large corporate super fund with them. Yeah, so it was a big fund. So from that perspective, and once again, it was just having the ability to be able to be young and dumb and just say, well, bad luck.
For sure. There's a few things there though. Like I think one thing that is probably valid is the fact that you were commission only before. Yeah. Right. I think what I notice a lot of the time in a lot of
we didn't charge entry fees or anything like that. So a lot of these corporate super funds back then, they'll charge like every member contribution 4.5% entry fee, etc. We were always zero. So a blind tender was always zero entry fees, zero rollover fees and things like that. And we would charge a blind tender and we charged an AUM fee. So we were one of the very few groups right from the start that were charged AUM fees, whereas somebody would win a corporate super fund and you're getting every time there's member contributions going in. So you get a National Mutual tailored super fund, corporate super fund, and, there's 1,000 members, now super's compulsory, back then at 3%. You're getting paid 4.5% of those contributions.
Jeez, they're big numbers.
They were huge.
Wow.
Yeah, so you're getting paid huge amounts of money every single month for doing nothing because it was just all direct debits, so no collector agents.
So my exposure was insurance, and when I was advising, it was like 125%, up front, and I thought that was crazy, and then hearing what super and everything else looked like as well. Yeah. Very profitable.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But like what I was saying was like, from the perspective of basically having been self-employed working commission only, it wouldn't have felt as big of a transition going out on your own.
No,
So I think that's the apprehension a lot of the time. Everyone's got the safety net of a a salary.
Yeah, I also though, I still remember vividly one of the things, because probably in the first year there was, up until I got Slater's, probably in the first few months was, I wanted to resign, every second day, so and get prefer to get a job as a barman, or my knee's feeling better now, I might go back and do triathlons. But I remember Father saying to me, you can go get a job anywhere you want, saying you might get paid well, but remember, when you get a job, if you work 10%, put in 10% effort and you hide somewhere, you might get paid, get a government job, and you might get paid 100%. But if you put in a 200% effort, you'll still only get paid 100%. You work here, you put in a 10% effort, you get paid 10%. You put in 1,000% effort, you get paid 1,000%. Choice is yours. He said, you're single, you got no children, you got nothing to lose. And he said, no, I don't charge you rent. I said, yes, you do. You charge me board. So he goes, Dad's Jewish. Good old Irish Catholic mum. So it was, that's Dad's marketing spin. He goes, it wasn't rent.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so, but it was but I think but that was always his adage. You put in the effort, you get rewarded for it.
Do you think it was a way of thinking more at the time as well, like the risk reward thing? Like I noticed, like we'll do a lot of sales roles. Like an example will be like, it's 80K base, 100K earning potential, and then we've got some that are 60K base, and the floor average is 140. Most people are going to take the 80K.
Yeah, and that shocks me. It really does.
I would say that's like 8 out of 10.
Yeah. I actually put it back to, you get rewarded based on the effort you put in. I just put that back to my sporting days. So I know that there was an old adage that was given to me by one of my coaches once, and that always remember that if you're tired one morning and you don't want to get out of bed, what's your competitor that you're up against that potentially is going to make the Australian team, and he might take your spot on the Australian team. Is he out of bed? Is he in the water training? Always remember.
And that's that's why I've always, for my own staff and when we're hiring, and I know this, you talk a lot about this, and this is part of your philosophy as well, like you learn so much about resilience, winning, teamwork, those early mornings, the grind, like when it's that moment of it's a 50-50, do I get up or sleep in, which way they're going to go.
Exactly right. Yep.
And yeah, I've always found it really interesting, your views on hiring and staff, because not many people look at that and think about that. And I was talking with Nick Steer as well. We were talking about how like even things like McDonald's and Red Rooster, and if you can show longevity even in those roles as well, and what you learn, like a lot of them are reporting a year or two into their role into the other stores and have to know P&Ls and the numbers and things like that. So there's a lot of things that people don't look at with those backgrounds.
Absolutely, and they're great breeding grounds for discipline as well, and actually systems. And even when I was coaching triathletes, I'd often say, I'm going to get you to do this, but here's the reasons why. And actually giving people reasons why I'm getting them to do it. So, Robin Daubeny would often say to me, Tony, you're going to ask 100 people to fill out this survey, because you're going to have 9 out of 10 that are going to say no. But every time somebody says no, just remember, celebrate it, because you're one person closer to that yes. And that's what I'd always think. So it's I was talking about my son who I go to the footy with. He's that eternal pessimist when it goes to the football. So he always calls it early. Within 30 seconds, they just keep going, that's it, we're gone. We might as well leave now.
I'll text you first.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So it's But he's pleasantly surprised when we win. So he's probably a lot happier than I am when we win, which being Essendon supporters is not an every week occurrence. So but from that perspective, it's I just look at it that you show up and you put in your best effort and you got a chance. If you're putting 18 out in the field and the 18 fit guys, you got a shot. And you play to your game plan and you do what you have to do. And that's the same with training, it's the same with work. You just do what you have to do. You stick to what you need to do. And it's. I was actually talking to our CEO on the way here. He's just telling me of a big family office that we work with, and they've just agreed to do some other business with us. And he's pretty proud of it. And he made the comment, and I said, well, the thing is that you've been really consistent with them. And that's the key, is that, we've been consistent all the time. Everything that we said we're going to do, we've always done. And if we're running a bit late, we've told them, listen, we're just going to be delayed a week on this. And if we're showing them something, we haven't talked it up. We've shown them what it is. We've shown them flaws in it. We've shown them weaknesses in it and things like that as well. So, and I think that's the key, is that it's just that consistency in everything you do, whether it's your training or whether it's your work or whether it's with your staff. It's being consistent, as inconsistent as you possibly can.
And it's Jamie.
Yeah,
right?
that's great.
Like his background, football, like consistency out there, leadership, like translates repetitions, like.
Well, he's a classic because he's the laziest guy you could ever meet. So it's on the football field. And I was saying this to Chris, when I did his podcast, and I said, but being his fitness coach, he was the most frustrating person to coach on earth. He really was, So but he had the greatest football brain I'd ever seen, and he could not stand running. But as a result of having such a good football brain, he didn't have to run. He just knew where that ball was going, and he was there before other people even knew that the guy was going to kick it. He was like a chess master.
But you know what? Like, I think sometimes that laziness in people, they just find solutions to make things easier in life.
He does.
Like,
So
with processes and outsourcing. And
he does,
like
and that's the key. But also, too, as a result of that, people respected him because when he told someone to go in a certain position, they went there. So he's always had these natural leadership skills in him, and he's a real people person as well. So, on the football field, he probably got whacked a few times because he's also got a mouth on him. So the opposition players didn't like him as much as his teammates did. Let's put it that way. But he's just got those natural leadership skills. Whereas at first we thought he was going to be an advisor, but it was just like, you're just too much of a leader. Now he's our CEO and shareholder now.
Incredible.
So he was employee 001.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell me, and this is going to be hard to articulate, I think, but the business Glenhurst got to 55 staff. It's a big number. Right, how does that? Was it over time? Was there a moment there that the growth came? If you're giving advice to someone who's, 5 years in business and they've got 2 staff and they can't, see the light to get to that sort of scale and size, were there things you would was there anything that you did at a certain point to accelerate the growth? Was it
probably better to talk this time around than back then? And the reason being is because the industry has changed and technology has changed, and it doesn't matter what industry I look at here and you see all the technology out there, which back in Glenhurst I had a phone, so it's I did have a laptop for probably the last 6 years of it, so it was different back then. We run our firm now. I spent a weekend with a guy by the name of Craig Rispin, who's a futurist. So I got together with a dozen or so of my clients from all around Australia, very successful in different businesses. We got Craig Rispin down at the Windsor Hotel for a weekend, and he did all the research on us all and ripped our businesses to pieces and told us how we're all going to be out of business within 10 years because of technology. You know, so it was from 3D printing, how our
long
was
ago
going
was
to
this?
be 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so he told me how I'm going to be out of business and if we don't do this, and it was fantastic. So what he did was he challenged all of us to think about the future and pivot, and not just to stay the same. And then the following day we hired 12 supercars and drove down to Red Hill and went to Max's, who's also a client, Max's restaurant down there, and just had a wonderful lunch and drank and shouldn't drive supercars. Under 05, we'll just state that as well. But it was a great weekend together. But the whole idea of it, though, was one of the things I got out of it was I came back and we've built the business now around a philosophy we call DARES. And DARES is that everything in our business, and we haven't got there yet, we are a million times better than what we were when I came back and put it up on a whiteboard and horrified Jamie and Boyana on what we're going to do, because I was very enthusiastic. But we are nowhere near where I want to be. Because everything's evolved, and there was no such thing as AI 5 years ago compared to where we're at now. So the DARES just means everything in our business must be digital, automated, recurring, evergreen, and scalable. I don't want to be a transactional business, as an example. That's the recurring. Evergreen is our marketing. I don't want the big, what I call, like, you always know when bands have gone broke because they're going and doing their superannuation tours. When the Eagles are doing when Hell Freezes over tour. They obviously run out of money. So it's
the final tour.
That's right, Paul Johnny Farnham. Or Kiss.
I did see another one. I think he's going again.
Yeah, so it's I've seen Kiss 13 times now.
Okay.
So my first time was when I was in grade 5, which was a few years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's 1978. So it's a few years ago now. When you're actually looking at everything we've got, so when the scalability side, so if I can manage $2 million worth of fees, why can't I have 10 advisors managing $1 million worth of fees each? Now, that sounds great in theory, but where the fees come from? So if the marketing's working well, the fees should be coming in. Well, the marketing's not as working as well as should be, which is why I don't have 10 advisors. So is the revenue there? Yeah, the revenue's there and the profitability's there. Well, why haven't I got the marketing working properly? So we've Dash Technologies, which were originally Raw, we've built our own systems rather than going through Xplan. So we've got the digital, we're getting things automated, which is working pretty well now. Not up to where I would like, and I'm not technologically gifted at all. The marketing, we're looking at actually buying our own marketing business or merging with, so we're actually exploring options there at the moment. So bringing that indoors as well. So what we're basically doing is having this well-oiled machine, but actually servicing to a standard through the roof. And I think that's one of the keys, but it's not going out to the masses, but going out to the mass affluent, which is the clients of what we actually want as well.
But I think,
So I'll touch on one other thing. This gentleman, I'll say his name. His name's Mark George, and Mark was a really good. He was only about probably 5 or 6 years older than me, Mark, but a mentor to me very early on. And Mark, I remember when he saw me just running ragged, just working ridiculous hours, and he said, "Why don't you hire an EA?" I said, what's an EA going to cost me? He goes, like 28 grand a year. He said, how much you made? And I said, I made 130 grand. I was 22. And he said, you can afford an EA? And I said, yeah, but it costs me the expense and after training, things like that. He said, Tony, have you got 10 grand to bank? I said, yeah. He said, just put 10 grand aside, because realistically, that's like 5 months' salary, gross salary straight away. Put that aside. And if she hasn't freed up, because they were all she's back then, if she hasn't freed up basically 15 hours a week of your time to either see more people, or at that time just have more of a life and not work weekends anymore, then it's the wrong person. So I ended up hiring somebody, my first person, her name was Donna. So I hired her, and she was great, absolutely fantastic. And she worked with me right up until she ended up working full-time at National Mutual after that. And she was magnificent. She freed up probably a good 25 hours a week for me. Ended up doing more meetings but having weekends off, and ended up having a social life and getting a girlfriend, and my God, that was wonderful.
Did that change a lot for you in terms of how you thought moving forward?
Yeah, my income doubled, and that's when I went out on my own.
Yeah.
After that, all of a sudden, I could see the light, and I could start making these plans, and that's when all of a sudden I earned more income, but not by working more hours, and that's when I could go out on my own and get my own premises, and all of a sudden have more money to put on more staff. Never had an overdraft. Never in my life. In 33 years of business, never borrowed money to have an overdraft. So in other words, my philosophy has always been that if I have to go into debt to pay wages, someone's getting paid too much, and it's usually me. So from that perspective, I've never had to borrow money to pay people. So I've just always done everything on our own cash flow.
With almost any business, right? It's like.
So I hope that kind of answers your question.
No, it does, for sure.
It gives you that sort of safety aspect. You get that two people. Well, if you're going to do this, what are they going to do to help you grow that person? Whether it's a EA, a marketing person, you have to say, what are they going to do to actually free up time for you to help you do more, to help you grow?
I always break it down to bringing new customers and retaining them.
Correct, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
If we boil it down to that, actually, I want to share an example, because one thing that I've learned about you is, you go to lengths to really over-service your clients. You're learning Mandarin at the moment?
Yep. I am.
This is what it takes. Can you share the story?
I can. It's Ni hao ma Nathan. So it's I can. So there's a Chinese family. We look at the son who lives here doesn't live too far from me in Kew. He lives in the wealthy part of Kew. I don't. So it's but they're a very, very unbelievably wealthy Chinese family. He's the only son in the family. Dad lives in China. They own ridiculous. His father was one of the original shareholders in Bank of China, and they still own over 160 different companies. Half of them are listed in China as well. When Dad had a senior manager that had a great idea for a new business and wanted it, and wanted to start up and left, I'd always go to Dad, and basically it was a case of that if he liked it and he liked the idea of it, he said, well, I'll fund it for you, but I'll take 50% equity. And thus is why he has equity in all these businesses where half of them are now listed, and including the largest poultry business in all of China, which started 14 years ago. They sell more poultry with duck and chicken per day than what they sell in Australia, everything combined, per year. It's a lot of chicken and duck.
Wow.
Yeah. So think of Ingham's on steroids, times by 365, times by every other Ingham's in Australia. So it's 15 years old. So the basis what it is Dad does a lot of business here, son's here. They don't invest here to buy Commonwealth Bank shares. They want to buy businesses here. So Dad was looking at buying equity in us. So rather than just using us to go and help with the corporate advisory, they were looking at buying equity in us and using us then. So we charge appropriate fees for the work we do, but in saying that, then using us. So God bless him, but Dad was over here. They own a winery up on the coast. They closed down the cellar door and just transfer the wine to their family office in Singapore and gives it to all his friends in China. But he brought over 8 of his business associates, as he does 3 or 4 times per year, and they go and stay at the winery down in Mornington and then go and play golf for 4 or 5 days and then go back. So he brought over, including his partner in the poultry business, and they were here we were having lunch with them then the day they arrived, and it was raining, and I was in Flemington, and we're having lunch with them, a nice Chinese lunch. Well, for them, lunch, we call it Chinese lunch. And at that time, I didn't speak a word of Chinese, and none of them, except for the son, speak a word of English. And we're sitting there, and Dad's had dinner with us before, and the son's always interpreted for us. But the son seemed to be very tired this day, so the son was interpreting. So I wanted to welcome them all. So I said, I'd like to welcome you all to Melbourne. Don't worry about the weather here in Melbourne. This is what Melbourne does. It's a bit rainy today, but tomorrow you'll need your sunscreen. Enjoy Mornington, enjoy the wine. The wine is beautiful down at the winery, and the golf course down there is magnificent. I don't play golf, but Jamie does, and it's fantastic down there. So I hope you really enjoy your stay. The son's sitting next to me. Nothing. Crickets. I go over there. He's nodding off. And I thought, oh no. I said, you going to interpret? And he goes, oh yeah. And he said like 4 words. Now, I can now say those 4 words, by the way. So he said basically 4 words. And they just all looked at me and they looked at him. And I said, what'd you say? And he said, I just told him, he said, welcome to Melbourne. Ni hao ma. I could say basically, I even know how to say Melbourne now. It's Melbourne. Odali, Melbourne, Australia, Melbourne. So it's just like,
But like it is like you don't hear a story too often where someone to service their client and to better service their client and to potentially, get new business would go to learning the hardest language. I'm guessing the hardest language.
Well, I'm not learning to read it. I'm learning to speak it, and learning to speak it from a business sense.
Let's not get technical. You're learning Chinese.
Yeah. So what I did was,
but it's an amazing thing to hear. I think it's sometimes like what it takes.
I'm not a fan of being embarrassed. Number one, the Chinese do have a thing about saving face. So I did have a quiet word with Yong several days later. So it's face to face. That after Dad had left. But when Dad comes out at Christmas time with some of his colleagues, I will be speaking to them and I'll be having conversations with them at that stage. Now, it'll still be broken. It won't be perfect or anything like that, but I will be having conversations with them all at that stage. And the key is what I did was I searched out online, and she was actually on LinkedIn, and she had lots of great reviews. She teaches business people how to speak Chinese. I had a couple of conversations with her. I then went up to Sydney. As you know, we have an office there. So I went and had yum cha with her in Sydney. We spoke, we got along really well, and I hired her, and I meet with her weekly, and I do every day. I do my tutoring on a daily basis, and I meet with her, and it's not easy, and sometimes I don't want to do it. Sometimes I don't want to get out of bed, like swimming sometimes, but you just do it, and it's I do my homework, I get it done, and I'm having that conversation with them, and it's really interesting because I must admit the first couple of weeks I thought, I'm never going to know this, and now it's just slowly, it's Share. I'm just being able to learn it just that little bit more. You know, you said you've noticed the Chinese characters beside my name. That's my Chinese name, Ko Yi Lin.
I love it.
You know, so it's and it's interesting because a lot
It's
of people,
Fearless Dragon, if anyone's wondering.
no, it's Oh Mighty Person. I'm melting man. I just change it every time someone asks. So, but I'll go with Fearless Dragon today.
Let's go Fearless Dragon.
That's what it is
You're
today. Yeah.
I'll ask. I'm just. Ooh, God. All right. So, like one thing, I battle personally with like I have a confidence about my ability to deliver.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then there's also fear at the same time. Right. Walk me through that as you grow. More overheads, more staff. Does that ever leave you?
No, definitely not. So it's, I still have the 3 a.m. wake ups. There's no doubt in that. And I think that the worst thing that could ever happen to any business owner, that if you start to become complacent, that's when things can really fall to pieces for you. And don't get me wrong, I've meditated every single day for 15 years and never missed it. Never missed my meditation. That's my, for some people it's prayer, for some people it's running, for some people it's alcohol. It doesn't matter what it is, but for me it's meditation. And and I love being in the flow of things. And for me, my flow state is actually swimming. No one can talk to me. I'm in the water. I don't have to remind myself to breathe. You just do it naturally. I don't have to count my strokes. I just do what I'm doing. That's my flow state. And so when you're in business, you still have these fears. I'm still uncomfortable with doing a lot of things, but I'm just so comfortable in doing the uncomfortable things as well. So
what sort of things make you uncomfortable still?
Oh, yeah, it's the first time I ever went to Cub.
Mm-hmm.
First time I ever went to Cub, I walked into a room of 100 strangers, all having beers, and I'm not a drinker, and they're all there, and they all seemed to be knowing each other, and I knew absolutely no one. And of course, what we could all do is we could all pull out our phone, because it's a crutch, these things, and you could pretend you're talking to someone, or you could get a drink and stand in a corner and feel uncomfortable, or I picked a target, which is what I do. So I picked a target, and my target was Jordan Papadopoulos. I saw him there with a beer by himself, and he'd obviously just arrived as well.
Send this to Jordan.
He was undoing his jacket,
and
I walked straight up to him and I said, "Hi, I'm Tony." He said, "Hi, I'm Jordan." I said, "This is my first day here and I'm feeling quite stupid." And he goes, "This is about my 5th. I'm not feeling quite as stupid." And we chatted and we laughed, and we've become great mates since. And he's a great Bomber supporter as well. So it's just finding those 6 degrees of separation. So the fact is that, and I got asked actually by a colleague at work, is, "Don't you feel uncomfortable going up and introducing yourself to strangers in those situations?" I said, "Yeah, of course I do, but I feel more uncomfortable standing in a corner by myself looking stupid." So that's, and I'll be on a tram and I'll sit down and I'll say hello to the person I sit down next to. And I don't care who it is, but it's interesting because I don't care if it's a young lady from Singapore who sounds like she's Canadian. It's who's just laughed. So it's because I don't care.
But it's an interesting one, right? Because I've also noticed Chris is an example. Like I'm trying to get better at like those.
He's a magnificent at introducing himself.
Yeah,
he's amazing at it.
Because anything that mildly scares him, like bungee jump, whatever, like he's like, "I'm booking 46 sessions,"
exactly.
But I think it's really important, those things that you're scared of, to do more of it and confront your fears. But I've noticed that as a common theme with a lot of successful people, that they tend to confront that head on.
But I also think too, that Nathan, I've got limited time on a daily basis, so I tend to say no often as well, and I say no to coffees. And
has that been a new thing to learn that lesson?
Newish, but it's so I will say no to coffees, which means I'm potentially saying no to opportunities, but at the same time, I also say yes to coffees if I believe that I like the person. You got a yes to the coffee.
Yes, all right. Yes. I didn't know there was a chance of a no.
There's a big chance of a no. So it's, but so
I struggle with that because I'm like, there could be an opportunity there.
Yeah, and so, but that's because we, and if you use a different word, we're in a sales role, and the point is that I might need to use your services one day, and if I need to use your services one day, I might as well get to know you. So it's and if I'm going to use your services one day, how I'm going to get to know you on a personal level, and I'm not going to use you because you look like my favourite footballer. I'm going to use you
and just as skilled.
Yeah, I know. So it's exactly so, and and we had spoken to each other on the phone about a year prior to that regarding your father. So who I think had spoken to Fisher Investments. So so the point is that one of the things is when I like to get to know the people, and once I get to know the people, really quickly whether you are going to click and gel with someone, and if you do, you say, yeah, okay, I can. Yeah, I like that. You can have a coffee with a person, and the coffee can be quick, or you can sit down and say, I'm happy to share a story with this person.
I love that.
Yeah, so and that's where it can just be a very quick coffee as well.
Yeah. Well, one last question, right? We're over, but it doesn't matter because we can do whatever we want.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
Love it.
Yeah, so you have to be at Marvel soon. So
I'm coming with you. Let's see if your son's coming or not, because I'll come.
Yeah.
All right. So if I say to you, get to the size you are now, of the business and where you're at, potentially going through a merger, in half the time, is it doable?
It is.
How would you do it? What would you do differently to get there faster?
To do it faster, so from one of the things that I was probably late at doing, and I put this down to my age, I didn't take up the marketing properly or as seriously in respect to using technology as quickly as I could have. And as a result of that, I haven't been able to... There's no use having advisors on 6-figure plus salary sitting there if they're not busy. And so I haven't taken advantage of the marketing side of things. And I'm not talking about just paying SEO and stuff like that, and getting some ads on Facebook, because I don't want... I want the mass affluent market. That's our market, and that's what comes to us. And we have been really inundated with a lot of clients purely based off referrals.
Yeah, that's what I've assumed.
Yeah, but we ask for them. We ask for referrals. But in saying that as well, though, there are a lot of clients out there that if they knew about us, would also come to us as well. So it's actually taking it to the next level. So our marketing is going to be slightly different. It's not just, say, SEO marketing and things like that. So... and this is where I'm just trying to find that right mix of the group that we're doing it with. I believe we're there. So I probably should have taken that up 2 to 3 years ago. I first came up with an idea before COVID, and then it just all fell aside, and now running with it again. So I've seen what some other firms have done, but that's sort of more the mass market rather than the market I want.
Is it more, like when you say marketing, is it more from I'm guessing it's not running ads, is it more just like brand presence, positioning?
There's a whole lot of people out there that need our services that don't necessarily know they need our services until they speak to us and they go, wow. And I think that's our industry in general. But the way we are pivoting our firm come 1 July, I think that's what's going to really differentiate us from a whole range of other firms that are out there. And I think that's moving forward is going to really, that intergenerational wealth transfer of a lot of people are, it's amazing how many people mention family office on their website, but would not have even got close to even speaking to anyone who even knows what a family office is, as an example. So that as an example, but there tends to be, and everyone might have that one client who has 7 million invested with them, but there is that niche market in there which we're working on and have really great exposure to, which are my age group, who are the children of the migrants who have businesses worth 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars that are now selling those businesses in the next 3 to 4, 5 years. Mm-hmm. That's my market. Mm-hmm. They're my clients now. Mm-hmm. And they're the clients that are already big clients of mine who are just going to become bigger clients of mine. And what we're doing is we're actually pivoting ourselves to bring on a lot more of those clients now. So there might only be $3, $4, $5 million clients now, but it's actually bringing them on and their children on as clients now. And that's why it's been really important choosing the right. And we've worked with this law firm for a good 2.5 years, and the principal of this law firm we've actually got joint investments with. We actually own equity in 4 other companies together, which we've done, and some VC work we've done together and things like that. So we've already got a great working relationship, and we're already parted with cash together from that perspective. So we know how each other work, and we're very aligned on that. And his father and I like doing karaoke together too, so that's a bonus.
Karaoke after the football, let's do it.
The voice is a bit rough today.
No, that's why. That's why we do it now. You'll sound fabulous.
It might be a bit of Barry White tonight.
Actually, we can just put some background music on now. Let it rip. The only things that come to my head are...
a bit of Frank Sinatra tonight?
For me, it's just Disney songs with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, both
See,
girls.
My boys are 28 and 26, so...
If you go to me sing... The first thing out of my mouth would be Frozen.
Well, I got you under my skin.
See, I
got you. Yeah, editing this out, I hope. Deep
no, this will stay on there for sure.
Of me.
Mine would
so
be
deep in my heart. Okay, I don't know Frozen. Sorry.
1 second.
That was nice.
I got you.
What is it?
Frozen.
Snow grows white on the mountains tonight, not a footprint to be seen. A kingdom of isolation, and it looks like I'm the queen.
You see, everyone knows Frozen. Who's Frank Sinatra? Different bit
I've
of an
forgotten
age gap.
other songs. It's
Here,
just kid songs. But on that beautiful note, pleasure having you on. Like, Nathan, every time I speak to you,
pleasure. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Yeah, so you kick a bag tonight.
Thanks for listening to The Leap. If you enjoyed the episode, give us a follow, or even better, share it with someone who you think would get value out of it. A big thanks to our main sponsor, Ethos 360 Recruitment, which is actually just me sponsoring myself.
This podcast has been produced by The Content Engine.